Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going off of my last video a little bit. My last video was how to blend colorful eyeshadow like a pro. If y'all haven't seen that, I will link it down below. But I hopped over onto my Instagram account and I asked y'all what y'all wanted to see and what y'all struggled with your makeup routine. And the majority of y'all responded that you struggle with like your base and your bronzer and contour and foundation and just getting everything to look nice and blended. So that is what I'm going to be doing for y'all today. I'm going to be giving y'all my best tips and tricks on how to blend your face essentially. When I do my makeup, I always say that I'm putting my face on, so I'm going to teach y'all how to blend that face, honey, okay? And I know I've done a couple different videos regarding like face and base makeup. If y'all want to see like my just daily routine, how I do my face makeup, I have a video for that. If you want to see all creams, I have a video for that. But I was watching those back and I realized that I don't really explain how to do things and how to get like a nice blend. I just kind of tell y'all what I'm doing and what I do in my daily routine, but I really want to give y'all some tips and tricks, kind of like my last video. Since I usually do my eyes first, I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and when I come back, I'll look a little crazy, but it'll all come together soon. Okay, bye, I'll see you in a second. Okay, so I am back. I got my eyes on. This is what they look like. I wanted to do like a smoky wing liner type look. Details will be on Hand Glam very soon if you want to see that, so. Also, I wanted to add, this video is not really a recommendations video. I'm going to be using the products that are best for my skin. You use the products that are best for your skin. I'm just showing you how to apply them in general. First step is primer, of course. I use two different primers, a hydrating and a silicone pore filling primer. So I always start with my hydrating primer first, and I put this everywhere just because I have dry skin. So there's really no technique to this. You just rub it in like lotion, basically. But when it comes to pore filling primers, you want to take a little bit, about that much. I rub it in between my fingers and then I press it into my skin, press it into the nose. Because with pore filling primers, you want them to fill the pores, so you don't just want to rub it across the surface, you want to press it in. When I get out farther from my nose, that's when I start to blend it out. I don't have as many pores there. I also put it in my smile lines because I crease a lot there, and my chin. If I have acne, like right here, I'm getting one, I'll put it on top of that. And then my forehead lines, I kind of rub this in over here. So now that we have primer on, it's time to move into foundation. Now, I don't want to spend too long talking about foundation. I feel like I could make a whole separate video on that. If that's something y'all would like to see, please let me know. I could go over shade matching. That was another thing I got in my DMs a lot. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to keep it moving just a little bit, but I'm still going to give y'all my best tips and tricks. So maybe it's just me, but I feel like we're moving away from that full glam, full beat, like full coverage type of makeup, and we're moving into a more let your skin breathe, love your freckles, love your skin type of vibe. So that brings me to my first tip, and that is to combine your tinted moisturizer with your foundation. Whether you still want a full coverage look or not, I found that combining the two just gives you the most beautiful finish. So I use it's literally about to run out. I already have a backup though. I use the ColourPop Pretty Fresh Tinted Moisturizer. I am the shade Fair 3W, and it is just perfect. The shade, the formula, I have dry skin, so I don't know if this tinted moisturizer would be best for you if you have oily skin, but this is just what I use. So I am going to be combining my tinted moisturizer with my foundation as step one. Now, if you want a more full coverage look, I would use more foundation and less tinted moisturizer, but I have just been embracing my skin recently, so I'm going to use more tinted moisturizer and less foundation, and this stuff really shears out too, so it's not as much as it looks like. When blending out my foundation, I use both a brush and a sponge, and the reason is because the brush gets me coverage, but there's always little brush strokes no matter how much I try to blend it out no matter the brush. And I don't always want like excess product sitting on top, so I'll go in with a sponge and it will remove the excess product. So I begin with my brush, and that's to get the most coverage possible out of this tinted moisturizer since it is so light. I start with patting motions. If you want more full coverage, you could go in swirls, but since I don't really care about coverage that much, I'm just swiping it on. Now that I put the foundation on with the brush, you can see all the little marks that I was talking about under the eyes over here. So that's when I go in with a sponge and I just blend those out. And please wet your sponge. I do not understand how people use their beauty sponges without them being damp, like, which honestly I shouldn't give so much hate because I did not wet my sponge when I first started using it. I hated it wet. I thought it worked way better dry, but now I'm just like, how it melts everything in so much better because it's adding moisture as it's, you know, blending. So now that I have the tinted moisturizer nice and blended out, I'm gonna go in with my foundation. Now, like I said earlier, put more if you want more coverage, put less if you don't, but you know, you do you. I just like a little bit. Going in with my sponge, if I were to go over this with a brush, it would just ruin everything that I just did, and it would also pick up the foundation underneath. Moving on to concealer, I have a tip for y'all that actually really changed my concealer game for me, and that is using 2 different shades. What I found is when I usually put concealer on, or when I did in the past, I would put either too much on, or it would just wouldn't be the right shade, or it'd be too light, or just like no matter what I did, it didn't look perfect. It didn't melt into my skin like perfectly. Get 2 different concealers. Get one that's a little bit too light and one that's a little bit too dark. You'll see why in a second. What my problem used to be was I would get a concealer that was too light, or even if it was the right shade, I would put it on and it would just make this whole area super bright and super white, and it was just too much. Even if I just put a little bit, it wasn't ever the way I wanted it to be. Once I started using 2 shades, I'll show y'all. I put the lightest shade in the inner corner, just a little bit. We don't need a lot at all. Then take the darker shade, not too dark, like you don't want it to be super orange, you know, just like a shade, half a shade down. Then bring that on the under portion of your eye. And y'all, when these 2 blend together, it's just like perfect. It like brings the lightness in the inner corner, lightens up your under eye bags like you want them to, but then you have this darker shade that when it gets down here, it gets to be too much, it just blends into your foundation because it's like a shade too dark. So it just, does this make sense? I don't know. When I started doing this, it just like blew my mind. I take the butt of my sponge and I just pinch it, and I literally am just pressing it and going side to side. That's the under eyes blended out. If y'all want to do concealer for the rest of the face, that's super easy. I don't like a ton of concealer. What I normally do from this point is cream bronze. So I'm going to take my Soleil Tendai Chanel bronzer by Chanel, dip my sponge in there. I kind of twist this as I do it to get a decent amount of product. I'll either bounce it off on my hand or on a towel to get the excess off. And then this is super easy. Just find the hollow of your cheek and go in a 3. Bounce it in circles. You don't want to bring it too far up or too far down, or else it'll just be like a blotch. So try to keep it in this area. When you have less product on the sponge though, that's when you can go to the outer edges and really blend those out without adding extra product. If you have a smaller forehead, you might want to add less bronzer. If you have a longer forehead, you might want to add more, depending on what you're going for. When you get to the nose, for your cream bronzer at least, just literally take the excess that's been on your sponge and dab over it, because you can fix it with powder later and you just want to get it covered. You want it to be like sun-kissed, you know? Or at least I do. When it comes to powder, I've found that it works best when you just target the areas that really need powder, because your whole face realistically doesn't need powder, and you're just adding on excess product that doesn't need to be there, and it's just gonna cake up over time, right? I typically always recommend loose powders over pressed powders, just because you can manipulate them more, you can do more with them. And with pressed powders, I feel like you're more limited. When applying powder, I highly recommend just always using a damp sponge to apply it initially, because if you go in with a brush straight after you put all those creams on your face, it's just gonna dry it out, soak the life out of it, and you really wanna like warm your face up to the powder before you just tack it all on there, you know what I mean? So take your damp sponge. I also recommend having 2 different sponges, one for creams, one for powders, because if you're using the same sponge for powders that you do for creams, it's just gonna chunk up a lot and it's gonna mess up your foundation. So I start by taking, you know, a slight amount of powder. That's really not a lot at all. And I just immediately press that under my eyes. And my sponge is still very damp. Like, I feel a lot of moisture. And that moisture is gonna blend the powder into my skin. And it gives me that like smooth finish. I also always look up when I apply my under eye powder. I feel like it gets into the lines better for some reason. And going back and forth definitely gets in the lines. Make sure you're going both directions, not just one way, because you want to get into both sides of the crevices. Does that make sense? Gonna do the same for my smile lines. And when it comes to the nose, that's where foundation rubs off on me. So I just kind of place it all over. But do y'all see I'm not applying very much powder, if any, out here, because that's not really where I need it. I will apply some to my forehead lines because those do crease like a biatch. And then my chin. For acne, I like to go in with a clean eyeshadow brush and dip that in my powder and really target the area that way. Now, this powder is just sitting on my face and I don't want it to sit there too long or else it will just dry out everything. So I go in pretty fast with the brush. And now that this is picking up all that excess powder, that's when I just kind of lightly, very lightly, dust it on the rest of my face. Now, at this step in my makeup, I always go in with MAC Fix Plus. If I didn't, I would just be dry and crusty. So after you spray, immediately go in with your damp sponge and press that product in, or else it'll just sit on top of your baby hairs and it won't really do what it's supposed to do. So just press it into your makeup. And what I found also, don't be going over one spot a lot with your beauty sponge or else it will pick that product up, because you are applying, you know, something wet on top of where you just powdered. So just one little bounce in each area and you should be good to go. My headband just keeps on going farther and further back on my head, but honestly, I don't care. I just need the baby hairs out of my face, and this will not stay on my ears. So I know I look ridiculous, but it is what it is. So just like I recommended having 2 concealers, I also recommend having 2 bronzers. One that is a little bit darker than your setting powder, and then one that is like significantly darker that you would actually want to bronze with. The reason is because after you powder, you make your face so pale, and you want to bring life back to your skin without using like a super dark bronzer that you would use in the hollows of your cheeks, right? So you want it to like be a gradient. You want it to be like, you know, probably the lightest area up in here by your under eyes, and then, you know, a nice bronze moment, and then you want it to like really be like bronzy in this area. So to get that nice fade, having 2 bronzers really helps do the trick. So I'm gonna go in with my lighter bronzers that I use and just put that all over my face, and also on the neck. You can't forget the neck. I'm pressing this into the skin because since we did recently just do creams, I don't want to go ahead and start moving things around. By pressing, you're just going to place the product on top. See, now that we have some more color to the skin, I can go in with my darker bronzer, which I use this one by Wet n Wild. It's amazing. It's in the shade Sunrise Striptease if you're curious. And then this is where I go in circles in the hollows of my cheeks. And you want to start light and build up. Like I said in one of my previous videos, you want to do a light layer of bronzer all over your face before you go in and just put so much bronzer in one area and then so much bronzer in another area. You want to like gauge how much bronzer you're really putting on. So I'll put a little bit on this side, then I'll go to this side. I go in circles for this part because now that we laid down that other bronzer, I feel safe that my creams are secured underneath, so I can go in circles and really blend this darker bronzer out. Forehead, same thing. I still use a huge brush when I get to my nose. I literally just go along each side and then my tip of the nose, and I'll come back and like powder that later and clean it up, but I'm really messy with it at first. Actually, I'm super messy with bronzer now that I realize it. Now that I have that like first initial layer, I'm just going back and adding more bronzer where I want it. And it's easier for me to see how much bronzer I really have on now. I'm probably gonna put more bronzer on than I normally would because I want this look in particular to be super bronzy, so just don't mind me. After I bronze, since I am so messy with it, I just go in and clean it up, taking my powder sponge, dipping a little bit into my loose powder. I just find the hollow of my cheek again, and I go right below it. To make the line not so harsh, I immediately go in with the butt of my sponge, which is still a little bit damp, and I drag it down. This will give you a softer fade and not such a sharp line. Now I'm just pressing in that excess powder using the moisture that's still in my sponge. For my nose, I just go straight down basically. For me, I go right where my nostril ends, like right here, and I just go straight up from that point. Sometimes I'll bring a little bit of powder on the tip of my nose or on the center if I got too much bronzer there, but I think it's okay right now. And I don't let the powder sit. I immediately just wipe it away. The longer you let it sit, the drier it's gonna get, and my nose gets really dry, so I don't wanna let powder sit on there super long. If you feel like you get bronzer too far over here or you wanna clean up areas, literally powder and sponge is your best friend. Go in very lightly, just with a light amount of powder because it'll go a long way, and just use it like an eraser. You're like, oh, I want to smooth, let's see, like this area. You see this area right here? Put your powder on it. And just drag it back and forth. I'm bouncing and dragging. It looks much more blended there now. So I feel like our bronzer is done. I don't contour anymore. I just don't. I feel like my face looks fresher without it. So skipping contour, I could teach y'all how to do it still. Just know that I don't do it in my daily routine or ever. Moving on to highlighter, actually, I used to always do my blush first, but I found that if you do blush and then highlighter, your highlighter will just sit on top of your blush, and you really want it to look like a glow coming from your skin, not a glow that's sitting on top of your skin. So doing your highlighter and then your blush on top, it'll just like come through and it'll be like, ah. When it comes to highlighter, I recommend either a dense fluffy brush like this. This is by ColourPop. This is their F5 brush. It's really, really great for packing on maximum color. Or the Morphe M05. It's a tapered highlighting brush. These are also really nice. So one of these two, something similar, are really nice. Real Techniques also has a setting brush that I feel like most people just use as a highlighter brush anyways, and this one is super amazing also. So when it comes to highlighter, dip your brush in the pan, obviously. And I start by going back and forth and getting the product where I want it. But once it's where I want it, go in circles. And this will melt and blend the highlighter into your skin, and it won't look like it's just a strip sitting on top. Go around the edges. If it gets on your cheek area, your blush area, you know, don't sweat it. It's fine. It's supposed to look like a glow. And I feel like that makes it look even more natural, honestly. But that's really the key to highlighters, is just going in circles and really making sure that it's blended and that you don't see where the strip is. I usually don't bring super metallic highlighters down on my cheeks though. It highlights a lot of texture. I go in later with a softer baked highlight that is a lot prettier for that. For your nose, you know, y'all know the drill. This stuff is easy. Highlight's easy. I do recommend applying your Cupid's bow highlighter with a brush though, and just going really fast instead of using your fingers to apply it, because I do see people in public who have obviously done that and then their highlight is like all the way up here. So just using a brush and pouting your lips a little bit, that will push your Cupid's bow out and it will just get in that area and not above it. Now, when it comes to blush, I feel like almost everyone, oh, gotta sneeze. When it comes to blush, I feel like everyone should pop their cheeks out. It just makes applying it so much easier. You'll see, like, you know what I mean? Like doing the fake smile thing. Bringing it not only up here, but also bringing it on back and blending it into your highlight, into your bronzer. You'll see. By the way, this brush is great for blush. It's pointed, but it's also tapered, so you're able to get just a little bit if you want it, but you can like really get in there, and it's just it's great. And since it's tapered, it really blends out the product a lot. So I got my product on the brush. I got a decent amount. These aren't super pigmented, so I get as much as I think I need, and then I dab a little bit off on the towel I have in my lap. And I always start on the apples of my cheeks. I put lighter pressure here, and then as I go back, I add more. And I'm just going in between my bronzer and my highlight where I applied it. Honestly, going on top of my highlight. Can y'all see here? It's going on top of my highlight too. By going on top of your highlighter a little bit, that will make it look like the glow is coming from out from underneath. I always put a little bit of blush on my nose. I feel like it makes you look sun-kissed, and then the colors are also complementary because it's also like in your blush too. Sometimes I'll run it on my chin and a little bit on my forehead just to warm up the whole face. As always, I put too much blush on, so I'm just gonna do the technique that I showed y'all earlier and clean up the areas that are a little bit too pigmented. Y'all can totally skip this next step if you don't like a super dewy look, but I feel like y'all have seen me do this a lot and there's not very much explaining to, so I just thought I would throw it in there because I do it every time I do my makeup. And that is highlighting like my whole cheek area basically. I go in with the Pure Nude Essence highlighter and I just dip my big blending brush in there and I just go right over the apples of the cheeks. This is how I get my skin looking super, super dewy, which is like my favorite. Y'all see that? Oh, wow. I love it. And last but not least, for the face is setting it. So use whatever setting spray you want and then follow it up with the same technique that you would after the MAC Fix Plus after you powdered, and go in with that sponge just lightly over each area, just like one time. Also, if you do your eyes first like me, cover up your eye area when you're spraying, especially if your spray has oil in it, like my Pixi Glow Mist in it, because it will mess up your eyeshadow. All right, y'all, I'm gonna go finish off my eyes, put some lips on, and I will be back to show y'all the finished face. All right, y'all, so this is the finished skin. So that is all for today's video, y'all. I hope you learned a thing or two about how to apply your base makeup. If you did, let me know in the comment section down below. But other than that, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and I will see y'all in my next one. Bye.